Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning into our recorded session about the Serious Games Developer Program. This session is actually pre-recorded for a couple of reasons. One being that we have people calling in from multiple time zones. We have folks on the East Coast, and then we also have folks calling in from Ukraine. So there's a big time difference. It's morning here, and it's evening there. So that's one of the reasons we're doing it this way. Another reason is that we have an awesome feature in Zoom that allows us to provide English translation support for two of our amazing Ukrainian panelists. With this feature, we're able to ask questions in real time and get responses. We also might make some cuts to the recording if needed, so thank you very much in advance to Yuri for supporting us in this live interpretation. So without further ado, let's get started. I'd like everyone to introduce themselves, and I'll start with myself. I'm Noelle. I am the production coordinator at Games for Change, and I spent some time working on this program. In November. It was awesome. And so it's really great to be able to host this panel and speak to some of our amazing panelists who are a part of the program. And I'd like to introduce Brian first. Brian, hi, how are you?
Hi, Noelle. Thank you very much. My name is Brian Furman. I'm one of the Assistant Cultural Affairs Officers here at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. And I'll be talking about sort of our idea and vision behind the project, which is the first time we ever did anything like it. And I think it's one of our coolest programs that we've done. So I'm super excited to share that with you.
Awesome. Margaret, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. My name is Margaret Wallace. I am a video game developer and entrepreneur, and I've been really fortunate over the past few years to work with Games for Change on a variety of initiatives. This is one of my favorites. I'm also the co-founder of a game development studio called Playmatics, and really am drawn to and love working in the games and impact space. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Margaret. I'd like to introduce Andriy Bachovsky and say hi. Hi, Andriy. How are you?
Всім привіт.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Andriy. I'm the game developer from Ukraine, and also I'm taking part in game jams on a regular basis. The latest one was the most serious one for me. Thank you for the invitation again.
Awesome. It was so great to have you. And the last person I'd like to introduce was another member of your team, Alexei Neterbanko. Hi, Alexei. How are you?
Всім привіт.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'm also the indie developer, and I'm taking part in jams. So, in fact, Andriy told me about those jams himself. So, for 3 years in a row, I'm taking part in all of them. And now I'm working more with the mobile games, but mostly I'm planning to do and to create games not free to play, but premium games for such platforms like Steam and others.
That's great. Well, I'm happy that we all have introduced ourselves, and I'm ready to kind of start talking about the program. So the Serious Games Developer Program was an awesome collaboration with the embassy in Ukraine. And Brian, I think I would want to start with talking with you and kind of talk about why the embassy has been looking at games, what brought the embassy to collaborating with Games for Change on this program, and just kind of starting to talk through like the why behind it.
Yeah, thanks, Noelle. That's a great question. And for sure, there's a lot of reasons why we have, as a department, tried to explore the gaming industry as a new fora for our cultural engagements. And so as we know, more and more, there are diverse populations around the world who are using games to contribute to learning and well-being or seeking games out for those purposes, using games to promote STEAM, to inform people, and to connect and create community, and of course, to address intractable social issues as well. And the US games industry is a leader in producing and distributing, in particular, these types of serious games. And for advancing best practices, both in corporate social responsibility that can sustain investment in the serious game market, but also in finding creative ways to engage people in serious issues through a medium that is fun, but also engaging. And I think personally, the times that I've always learned the most have been when I felt really engaged in something. And I think games give you the opportunity to really get in the middle of a scenario or an environment or a situation. And when that's framed in a way that can push you toward thinking about things in a new way, or toward changing your mindset, I think that can be really powerful. And so we were super proud to support the Serious Game Jam project, and it was fantastic when we saw the application for the grant from Games for Change, because Games for Change is a known leader in the educational side of creating these game jams, and I'm super glad that we were able to work together, and I think that the participants are also very glad.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. I'd love to hear from Andrew and Alexei. I know that this might have been your first exposure to serious games. I know you were seasoned developers in the past and have done a lot of work on your own. What brought you to this program?
Давайте я, напевно, почну.
Well, let me begin then. This could be the whole list of points. As I already said, I'm the regular visitor and participant of game jams, and from time to time I call Alexei. So this invitation is one of the motivators already. Secondly, it develops me personally. I'm attracted by this game jam because it was sponsored by the US Embassy to Ukraine. For me, it's the wow effect. It's a very serious thing. Thirdly, serious games as they are interesting for me. At the moment when I applied for Game Jam, I did not understand what that was. I had my understanding, but after the workshop, it changed a bit. And the last point is the money prize, of course, which was a motivator as well. So maybe Alexei can add anything? Yes. I like the games which make us think on something, and I hoped that at this jam there will be something like that. So I wanted to try myself in that.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like we had a lot of awesome reasons to participate, from the grand prize to having a new exposure to this kind of game and these kind of projects. We did a couple of things for this program. We did, more than just a game jam. We also had started our program with a workshop. And Margaret, I think you would be able to speak a little bit more about the workshop as one of the facilitators. Margaret, I just want to hear a little bit about the Deep Impact framework and some of the awesome things that we did to kind of start setting the stage of why serious games and how to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Noelle, for that great question. So Games for Change came to me about a year ago and told me about the Serious Games Game Jam and Workshop program. And we talked about the idea of implementing a 2-day workshop that sort of focused on game development, but game development from the standpoint of integrating impact and integrating principles of what we in the United States call double bottom line. And I guess that term has been around for quite a while, but it's pretty new. It was pretty new to me. I only learned about it when I started working a lot more closely with Games for Change. And the double bottom line is basically, it's possible to make games or products or something that both has financial rewards and incentives, but also has a positive impact on our world at large in a number of areas. And so I was tasked to take a look at whatever existing frameworks that Games for Change already has in place for helping developers apply game development and design thinking and product skills with different impact frameworks and mindsets. And Games for Change did have an older curriculum that I took and I basically revamped and sort of prepared it for what I like to think is, forward facing, because we all know that games are probably the most pervasive form of entertainment in existence today. And, whether you're talking about a digital game on your phone or PlayStation or playing board games or just playing a kids games, play is an integral part of our lives and our worlds. So I wanted to, with Games for Change oversight and buy-in, of course, I wanted to create a curriculum that was dynamic and adaptive, also was realistic in terms of what it really takes to make games that have an impact component. But also, I wanted something that felt hopefully a little bit challenging. You know, one of the challenges is that when you're presenting a framework of development or design thinking, people who are going to be working with that framework are coming from a whole different set of experiences and capabilities and mindsets. And in the case of this workshop, you know, it was really important to make sure that it was understood from the very foundation that this is a dialogue, that making impact and driving impact, it's not a one-directional thing. So it wasn't just a matter of us at Games for Change saying this is how you have to do things, but it's really a conversation, because we only are stronger by our diversity, our diverse experiences, our diverse cultures and geographical locations and all of that. So we broke down what we call a DEEP framework, or a design impact framework. It just DEEP is what we called it because the main umbrellas for each section are the first letters of those words. So the first part of that framework is to discover. So really, it's a matter of looking at what you want to build. If you have if you want to look at an audience or a social issue, for example, climate change, or something that I've really been involved with, health education, really just discover everything you can about that topic. Look at what's been done, what has come before, where opportunities are, where things have fallen short. I mean, and in fact, in creating this curriculum, that's exactly what I did. Is I took a look at every impact framework that I could find, whether it had to do with games or not. I looked at different college courses for design, game design in general, and just tried to figure out, you know, how can we be different because we are Games for Change, and also how can we make it meaningful. So the first phase is discover, and then the second phase is execute. You know, what's your plan? What's your development plan? And then the third phase would be to evaluate. So what kind of evaluation comes into play to really, are you measuring what you think you're measuring? How are you going to measure impact? And then if you are successful, the final phase is pay it forward, because really, you know, although talent has a lot to do with success, there's also a lot about luck and timing that comes into play. So within that whole sort of framework of discover, you know, identify your problem, what's your thesis of change, execute, how are you going to implement it? And really, there are a whole bunch of things that go under that. Evaluate, are you building what you think you're building? Are you meeting the audience where they're coming from, and is that effective? And then how can I build on what I've created to help the ecosystem and community at large? And so with that framework, we created a 2-day workshop, and it was really so much fun. We looked at things like, what do you mean by impact? You know, how do you create a user-centered design journey, not only for players, but also for the institutions that we might be working with, whether it's teachers or doctors or scientists. We had a whole number of innovators who provided expert insights, ranging from Celia Hodent, Nick Fortuno, Ralph Koster, Sinjin Bain, the founders of GamerSafer, Maria Tamolini and Rodrigo Tamolini. So we had a real great diverse variety of experts who provided case studies. We had mentors along the way. And we also had some really awesome workshops that were used to help ground the sort of lofty and abstract principles of the framework, you know, to help all of us engage in a conversation around what does it mean to establish an impact strategy? What's your impact thesis? Does your game have the potential to transform or significantly improve lives? Is your theory of impact grounded in evidence? And who do you need to reach out to? What's the constellation of partners that you need to bring into play to engage in those different ideas? And basically, we really took some of those principles, tried to drill deep into all of that. And honestly, I hope that the participants in the 2-day workshop got as much out of it as I did. It was honestly one of the most inspirational experiences I had. And some of the challenges, again, were, we all have our filters on in terms of, who we are, where we come from. And so it was really important to understand that not one answer or one strategy is acceptable for every different context, every different person, group, or location. So it was I thought it was a wonderful experience, and I was really grateful to have had that opportunity.
Yeah, Margaret, it's so great to hear you talk about the workshop. I feel like I'm re-experiencing it for a second time, and it makes me feel really great to hear about some of the process of the DEEP framework and how we kind of did this, the activities that we had done. It was a very hands-on workshop that brought a lot to our participants. I would love to hear from Andrea and Alexei, what was the experience like for you both?
Ну, я почну,
Well,
напевно, здалеку.
I will begin from afar. For me, it was the first experience at all of the participants in any online event or measure, not offline conference, but online only. And I was impressed how much of the efforts were used to conduct all of that, because we had the online format when we had to create a group of people to get acquainted with each other in the browser. And then, as Margaret has already mentioned, we had mentors, and that's what I was motivated by, to take part in the workshop, to get some expert opinions from the people from the industry. Maybe Alexei, can you add anything while I'm thinking? What I liked is that there were many mentors, multitude of them, and they shared their experience and told about some of the cases and games. For instance, there was some info about Never Alone, such a game, which I really like as a platform. And I'm inspired by those games. That was very interesting to listen about that. And altogether, that was an interesting experience. Maybe from time to time, that was a bit too much of information, and sometimes it was not that easy to perceive it. But altogether, it was really cool and interesting. Thank you. And I'd like to add more that Margaret just told about DEEP framework, and as far as I remember, this framework inspired us. I do remember the moment when we shouldn't focus on the game only. We should go on communicating with the players beyond the game. So what we tried to do in our game, in the end of the game, we just asked the people to leave their feedback about their experience in the game. Then we collect all of those feedbacks at the website. And this is how we involve the people to take part in the website to get some experience beyond the game. That's what I remember.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a conversation about some of the engagement that you had for your Game Jam project. And I think maybe at this point we can transition to talking about the Game Jam. So after our workshop, we had 2 days of kind of learning and understanding and kind of really diving into what serious games are with the help of our mentors and our facilitators. And then we had this Game Jam, and we had a theme of connection. I'm certainly wondering what our audience at home thinks when they think of the word connection. But for us, one of the reasons we chose this theme was our theme of global collaboration throughout this program. We were connecting folks from Ukraine to create games about serious topics. We were also connecting US and Ukrainian developers and mentors. So a lot of prototypes came out from this theme that were really awesome. And the one in particular that we are really focusing on is Andrea and Alexei's game, Grand Story, which also won our, programs competition and won $5,000 to continue developing their game. So I'd like to kind of take a pause, since we are pre-recorded, and just play a quick trailer of Grand Story and then hear a little bit about the game from Andrea and Alexei. So Grand Story is our winning game for the program. And I'd like to start by talking a little bit to Andriy and Alexei about their creation and about what inspired it and how Grand Story kind of came to be during the game jam.
Ну, напевно,
Well,
все
maybe
починалося з
as it always happens at game jams, it began with an idea. We just brainstormed around the topic of connection, that is interconnections. And honestly speaking, I don't remember when this idea came to my mind to create this game about the older lady, but the thinking process was approximately like that there should be connection between the cities, and the connection between the cities and the villages is much worse, but my grandmother is living in the village, so we can create the game about the older lady. And besides this idea, we had two more ideas, by the way. We had an idea to create a game about the traffic rules. And there was one more idea to create a game about the animals without any shelter. So we decided to create the game about older people. Well, my personal motivation, maybe Alexei will disagree, but my motivation was that, in fact, this topic of the life of the older people and the issues they face is not that often raised in art, not only in games, but in cinema, in any form of art. And secondly, it's my personal feeling of guilt, which I feel for my grandparents, because I'm not that often communicating with them. So it really motivated me to create this game. Alexei, what will you say? Well, yes, we were trying to define the topic for a rather long period of time. So first we thought about this older lady, and I wanted to create the game about the pets, the little animals. We wanted to create it not as a strategy, but at some point I was inspired and touched by the topic about the older lady, so we began to create this game. If I'm not mistaken, there was one more topic about environment and sorting of the litter and garbage, but it's so overused topic. It's used too much everywhere. According to the outcomes of the game jam, there were 5 or 6 games with the ecology topic. So I'm happy that we got rid of this topic and created something of our own, which was really different from the rest. And I can also add that at the stage of the invention of the idea, we had to invent the genre of the game. In case of our game, I do remember that first we thought to create the platform game, that the older lady gets to the post office to take the letter, then she comes back. But we thought and thought on that, we contemplated, and we couldn't invent any interesting game mechanics on that. So we came back more to some of the narrative experience, to focus upon the story itself. And as much as I remember, we were thinking how it could be done better, the perspective from the point of view from above, or a first-person story. And Alexei, if I'm not mistaken, offered me to make it a first-person story, because then it would be simpler to make it graphically even. And it's much more interesting when you do it from the first person in comparison with the view from above.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to hear you talk about the game mechanically and some of the components of this game. Being the grandmother waiting for a letter from her grandson is a really kind of powerful story as you're kind of going through the house and just kind of waiting as the days go by. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, culturally, like how Ukraine considers elderly people and what some of the, how elderly people are treated in Ukraine. I would really appreciate that cultural context as well.
Well, probably as for the cultural points, some of them are not unique. They're global all over the world. That is why our game was liked by everybody. But if we speak about Ukraine in particular, one of the biggest issues is poverty. The country is still developing. So this is the issue of the awful conditions. And also, secondly, I can remark that the country is actively being urbanized. The majority of young people are living from their little settlements or villages to the bigger cities, first of all, Kiev or other million population city. So we lose the connection between the generations, between the children and the parents. And maybe
Певне соціальне мислення, ось я
some of the
помічаю
social thinking, I can see that in my grandparents, that in fact, they're a bit losing this sense of living. They don't know what to strive for, what to be willing to do. They're a bit of the reserved. When I've been to Europe or to the US, I could see that older people outside are much more open for something new, for communication with other people. But our older people are much more reclused. They have their own corner where they are sitting, maybe in a couple, and it's already good if they are in a couple, if they are not on their own, and communicating. They don't communicate with other people. Sometimes even they don't communicate with their children. Alexei, can you add anything? Well, in fact, Andriy really described everything rather well. Yes, I think that a big issue is that in Ukraine, we have a high level of poverty, and altogether, lots of older people don't have any opportunities to go somewhere or to travel or even to go for a walk, for a stroll, where the money is needed, where you need to pay. There are lots of restrictions, and this is one of the problems. I also remembered, I can add that maybe partially the problem was that after the Soviet Union split up, there has been the change, the substantial change in the way of life. Now we have private property, but when they were 40 or 50 years old in the 90s, the most active phase of their life was behind them. So they were left with nothing. They did not have a big pension or property. They didn't have anything. So maybe this is the reason of that poverty. And by the way, we haven't told about the complications during the development. Maybe we should speak about that as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I would love for us to talk a little bit about some of the challenges while developing the game, but I really appreciate you providing this added context for why this was an important theme for you both as you were developing the game. So yeah, I would love to start to hear a little bit more about the challenges and what some of the trials were of having a small game jam and creating a serious game prototype.
Олексій, може ти почнеш це?
Alexei, could you begin this time?
Олексій?
Alexei, are you here? Oh, yeah. I don't want to be the first all the time. I'm giving you the chance. As we already mentioned above, we could not choose the topic for a long time. That was the first challenge, and it took some time from us. Then we had an issue as for the coding itself, because when we were, this is the first time when we had to work together, when we had to collaborate, and when we began to combine our codes, we could see some of the problems and challenges in that, but we solved them, and it was an interesting experience. Andriy also helped as for organizational structure and coding, how to unify the code. I can add from my behalf, as it seemed to me that we had this proper constellation of stars. There are some of the strengths of Alexei and some of the strengths of mine. All of that was combined in one game. I personally have never worked on 3D games, and Alexei vice versa. He has a huge experience in that. And thanks to that experience, he could just create the level in 3D in half a day. And before the gem, I was working on a different game where there was the dialogue system. So I took this system and integrated it into the game. So in this short period of time, we got the working prototype. Combining our strengths, we managed to create this game rather quickly.
Yeah, it sounds like that time pressure was a big component of finishing the game and getting things done quickly. But it's great that you both had the skills and resources to be able to work on it as well as you did. I think it would be great to hear from Margaret and Brian for a minute and just kind of talk a little bit about your impressions on Grand Story. Brian, you were actually one of our judges during the process, so it would be great to kind of get your perspective first.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. I mean, the game was awesome. Obviously, it won. So a majority of the judges thought it was one of the best of the group, and I still think that it was a fantastic game, just as sort of the player experience. But what I really liked about it was how Andriy and Alexei addressed a social issue and highlighted the importance of supporting elderly populations and our family members. And I think it was just very poignant for the past year that has been so difficult for so many people who have been separated from their families, either physically or if not physically, then sort of because of social distancing or whatever the reason may be, or separated from their friends. And I think, even though the game was specifically focused on supporting elderly populations, I think the theme of connection, which was the challenge, came out strongly, not just for that particular social issue, but in general about being mindful that in these difficult times, human connection is really important, and it's something that we need to be thinking about. And so. And one of the things that I also really loved about this game is, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but the way that the game interacted with its users at the end. And I think that, sort of beyond the game, there's still a way that this game interacts with you as the player or as the audience or as the developer, I'm sure, as well. And so I thought that was really cool, and I think it spoke to the true roots of what we were trying to do with this program. So I loved it, and I still love it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to kind of coming back to the piece that was added at the end of the game and how you are kind of encouraged with a call to action at the end. But before I kind of segue into that, Margaret, is there anything that you'd like to add about the game? Or the topic?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, all of these, I agree with what Brian said, and I really, really enjoy hearing the story behind the development and how you came together as a team to make this. I mean, gosh, I feel so many things about this game. First of all, the game itself, it's really an art and shows incredible talent to actually, in such a short amount of time, build something that creates such a meaningful experience and really draws on emotions in a way that also makes you as a player want to stay engaged with the game. So just from that standpoint, I just feel like it hit so many important marks for me as far as relevance, meaning the gameplay was fun, and it was not fun. I mean, it was fun, but it was immersive and intriguing gameplay. I think the topic itself is something I think a lot about. It's such an irony of our lives that you would think having an advanced age, making it to 70, 80, 90 years old is a celebration. I mean, so many people don't have that luxury to be able to have such a long life. And yet a lot of different cultures, different societies, mine included, don't necessarily place the right kind of value on that life. And really, what does it all mean at the end of the day sometimes when you think about that irony, where you want to celebrate life and history and experiences. And I also think working in the tech industry, it's something, it's so focused on youth, but people are only quote unquote young for a very discrete amount of time. So just the fact that this team focused on this theme, and it has such relevance and meaning across multiple cultures, I just found really striking. And I know you're going to talk about the later add-on. I don't want to jump to the end. We'll talk about the later additions, but in terms of impact, one of the ways that we measure impact is, does it have a real world effect? Is there something in the real world that happens because of the experiences playing this game? And this team remarkably pulled that off as well, which is just really special. And I'm really honored to have been exposed to this game and to the creations of Alexei and Andrei.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Margaret, for sharing your thoughts.
Дуже дякую за ці слова.
Thank you so much for those words. It's really pleasant for us to hear that. Margaret and Brian, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd love for us to talk a little bit about this action item and this call to action. I know we've kind of danced around it a little, but, at the end of Grant's story, there is this call to action to call a loved one or a relative. And, people are able to share that with Andrei and Alexei via a form. So, I think Andrei, Alexei, I'd love to hear a little bit about the audience who played Grant's story, what might have been surprising or new, and what some of the feedback and the response was to people who engaged with Grant's story.
Так, я можу трохи
Well,
розповісти, як це взагалі
I can tell in more details how it is working. When the player is playing the whole game, there is a short phrase in the end. If you like the game, please tell us, or no, please call your relatives first and tell us about that through the form in the main menu. Then the player is pushing the button about the main menu and gets to the form of Google. And through the Google forms, we collected the data about the age, their location, and whom this person called to, and how was the conversation. Maybe Alexei. Oh, yes, I could add, as we said about that, we took the adequate answers and responses and showed them at our websites. And Alexei, could you tell a bit more, in more details, how many feedbacks we had and so on? Your impressions. Well, altogether, we collected approximately 50 feedbacks. That is, high quality feedbacks. But there were some feedbacks from trolls, of course, which were not serious. So we deleted them. The majority of the feedbacks are from the youth. Lots of feedbacks from the people aged 11, 12, 14 years old. And lots of feedbacks from the US. So this is the peculiarity of the website, I guess, because the majority of the visitors are the Americans, right? But still, there were some of the feedbacks from Indonesia, from Ukraine, of course, from Greece, and other countries. Besides that, we got lots of cool comments at the website itself. People said that they liked the game. They wrote their own stories, small, shorter stories. I can add also that there is a certain number of views at the YouTube and comments. And I was really touched when people were reacting and responding. It was rather pleasant as well. And I can also add that Alexei has just mentioned that the audience is global, but When we created the game, in fact, we wanted to make this game to be among the Ukrainian audience, because this game includes lots of references towards Ukrainian reality. For instance, every day, daily, every morning we can hear the alarm clock, and the alarm clock is just the radio. The grandmother, she just wakes up, she turns off the radio and begins her day. This is the reality of the majority of the Ukrainian villages and smaller towns. As Alexei has mentioned, the majority of players were the international audience. But still, we were not offended by that, and not that sorry about that. That's even more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really, honestly, I think it really speaks to the global collaboration and kind of the global nature of the topic, of just like thinking about how you received responses from people in Greece, a majority of people in the US. There seems like it's a topic that really kind of was universal in many cases. So it's awesome to hear that you had such a great response and such great feedback from people who were inspired and like impacted by your game. I think it really speaks to kind of like the nature of the program, as well as the nature of kind of what you were creating, and the inspiration that you not only had from the program, but also like what you brought to the web and to the world. So it's really awesome. I give you all the congratulations for being able to really kind of inspire us in the same way that you inspired other folks who responded in your forms. Also super emotional to me as well. I definitely, this was one of my favorite games of the Jam. So I was really happy to see the development that happened. I think it would be awesome to just kind of talk a little bit about the Jam itself, and maybe, if there's, any lessons learned from creating a serious game that you'd like to share, any advice on the program. I think that would be a really great thing for us to kind of do as we're starting to close up our time together.
Так, ну я можу сказати.
Well, I may say that one of the main lessons I took out of the Jam about the serious games, that you shouldn't try to solve all of the issues of the world with one game, or maybe any one global problem. For instance, the ecology, the environmental issues. We just should focus on something small. If we speak about ecology, we should make people aware that the lid of the bottle can pollute much more than the bottle itself, or something like that. So we should focus on some simple idea, how we did, and make people aware about it. I would advise to create the games which you really like yourself. And if you create what you don't like, then you can hardly achieve success. I can also add that, in fact, as a game developer, both serious and not that serious, I'm always focused upon my own taste. If the game does not lead to any emotions, it won't lead to any emotions among the people. So I should focus and concentrate on the stats or graph? No, it shouldn't. It's not the way we should do it. We should focus on our feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Margaret, is there anything you'd like to add as well for people who are interested in creating a serious game?
I really resonated with the idea of keeping a focus very, very narrow, even if you don't think it's necessarily, sometimes game developers get the advice, oh, you really ought to make this as relatable to as many people as possible. But as you can see, focusing on a specific situation, grounded in a village, in one place, it adds a lot more texture and a lot more, many more layers, and it's also something that that can also engage people from all over the world. So I really love the idea of focusing. I also like the idea of not being dissuaded from, making making the game that's meaningful to your context. You don't always have to do that, but that can work and be effective. I also really want to speak to the importance of just having a good team chemistry. I mean, this game could have turned out completely differently if the team, didn't work well together. And that's just so important for any kind of success for any kind of game environment, especially early stage, and especially something this early that you're creating from the ground up.
Absolutely, absolutely. Having a team that you're really collaborating with can make all of the difference in working on these kinds of projects. Brian, is there anything else that you'd like to add on creating a serious game, or how we can talk about serious topics?
Yeah, thanks, Noel. I mean, I think the last thing that I would add is that, I really hope this is kind of a message to some of my colleagues. I hope those of you who see this really do consider exploring gaming as a way to connect with unique audiences, new audiences, to create something that is sustainable, because the games then are things that people can play in perpetuity unless they get removed or something. So, I mean, I think that the value of doing work in this industry, not just for the idea of reaching new audiences, but connecting US companies to Ukrainian ones, which was another big part of our goal here, helping develop the next generation of video game developers who are gonna hopefully go on and create games that are meaningful and have some real social value in addition to just populating a very large market. And so I think, helping our audiences and game developers in many countries throughout the world learn the skills that they need to do something more niche and more interesting is also a hugely cool aspect of what we're able to do with this program. And so my message is really that I really hope that more programs show up throughout public affairs sections across the world that have a gaming component, or that really focus on this sector, because I think we found it to be extremely not only successful but also rewarding for us as well, especially given how awesome the final product of the winning team and the other final products were.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's really awesome to think about what's going to happen in the future, and more avenues for collaboration and more avenues for doing this kind of creation, especially as games continue to become more mainstream, but also continue to pivot towards more serious development and serious topics and impactful emotional issues. We see so many games now that are becoming more and more commercial, that are focusing on serious topics and important issues and emotional issues, and really appealing to the ethos of the player. So, I think that it really speaks to what's next and what's coming. Games for Change has also done other kind of global collaborations recently. We've done projects with the French Embassy and, other kind of really cool things. But it makes me excited for what might be next and where we'll go with as we continue to develop programs and develop to encourage people around the world to be developing serious games. I think for our audience at home, for people who are really interested in this kind of topic and interested in what people might be creating and how to get started, I think the last question I'd like to ask, if we have any other advice for developers who are new to this space and maybe aren't sure where to start. Does anyone have any encouraging and thoughtful words for those people who are ready to begin?
Ну, я можу сказати.
I may say that from my own experience, I began my way in the game industry without knowing anything. And out of my own experience, I can say that if you're permanently trying to do something, if you try to develop yourself, you can achieve a lot. So the main recommendation, just do something. Even if you do something wrong or you create bad games first. It's a natural process. It's okay. You should improve. And altogether, if we speak about anything, about games or any creative projects, you should begin with something small. When you don't know how to do it, it's better to create some small game and to launch it than to create something big and never launch it, in fact. So in the gaming industry, it's rather important such topic as a portfolio. And if you've got some of the issued projects, it's already a big advantage for you, both from the perspective of the employer and you as a personality. Because when you had the whole process from the creating of the idea to the web page in the store to some idea for the players, you have the full perspective how it is working all together, and it really is helping. So that is why I can recommend game jams, because here, just in 2 days or in a week, you can go through the whole cycle from the idea to the ready product, and you can even get some feedback from the jury, from the players, and so on. I totally agree with Andriy. It's so important not just to get rid of your idea after the first failure. And it does not concern only gaming industry, it deals with anything. There are lots of people who don't have enough of time or enough of efforts, so they just don't do anything anymore. And yes, jams are really cool, and they can even be suitable for those who are in the industry already. It really develops some of your skills, and it's a very nice option to create some prototype during such a short period of time, relatively short. And maybe then, out of this prototype, you can create a very nice project which can be developed more and more.
Wow, that's such great advice. Both of you had really amazing thoughts. Just to add to that, I will also say, it's important for somebody like me who's been in the games industry for a very long time to remember that games are everywhere. They're not only everywhere in our lives, they're in just about every industry. You will find games or game thinking, game mechanics utilized for a whole variety of reasons in a whole variety of industry sectors. So I would definitely, to whatever extent it's possible, to meet people who are in different industries, but who are interested in games or game-like products. It's important, if it's possible, to establish those kinds of connections and conversations, and to just know that that those folks are out there and they want to learn from it, because everybody knows how pervasive games are. So that's one thing. And then on a more philosophical note, I think it's also important to really be in touch with and define what success means to you, because there's going to be a lot of there will be a lot of opinions about what success means, and some of those opinions are useful, some are not. But really knowing, like, in my heart, am I, what is it? Is something that is going to make millions of dollars? Is it a hyper casual game? Is it impacting the lives of elderly people and their connections to others? And maybe those things are not in opposition to each other, but just having a strong inner sense of a vision about what is success for you versus what people tell you success should be. I think that's really important to keep that in mind.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Brian, any final words of wisdom for our viewers?
I, out of everybody here, am the least qualified to give advice to game developers because I am not one. But what I can say from the perspective of having put in a lot of time to organize this grant and this program is that take advantage of these types of opportunities. I mean, they are in existence, and people are doing stuff that can help you develop professionally and personally. And sometimes it takes a little extra sort of looking to find it. But there are opportunities available for you to learn the skills that you need to help achieve what Margaret was talking about, that level of success that you've defined for yourself. And I really liked what Andriy said as well about participating in some of these smaller programs that can get you thinking and brainstorming, and you end up producing something. And I know personally in sadly not game design, but in other things in my life, sometimes it's just that little push that makes you eventually get the ball rolling, and that is in and of itself such a valuable thing. And so I hope both for Andriy and Alexei, as well as for the other participants of the program, that we were able to give them that push on their journey toward their vision of success. And so all of that to say, keep an eye out for other cool programs and participate in them.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I think the last thing I'll just say to bookend everything is that showing up is half the battle. And, show up for yourself, show up for the things you're passionate about. And I think that really echoes what all of us have kind of shared during this time together. I want to thank all of our panelists for being a part of this conversation. This was awesome, and it was so much fun to be a moderator and hear all of your thoughts. And please look forward to more programs, and please continue to engage with the Games for Change community as we're kind of exploring these new ideas and talking about these awesome programs. And yeah, thank you all so much, and thank you to our viewers at home.
Thank you.